we looked at a timeline, right? And at the very beginning, we saw the woman was who? Does anybody remember? Okay. But, I mean, a woman represents the church, but actually this was the time of Jesus' birth. Because, let's just recap so that we can move forward real quickly. But Revelation chapter 12 and verse 4, it says, his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, right? That's all the way back in heaven, when Satan deceived the third of the angels. But then it said what? The dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. That was the birth of Jesus and how Herod tried to destroy Jesus, right? So the dragon there then doesn't represent Satan, it represents Herod and the Roman armies, okay? So that's why we have to be careful how you're interpreting this. And then she brought forth a man-child, rule all nations with a rod of iron, he ascended up to heaven. And then the woman fled into the wilderness. For how long? 1,260 days. What is that time period? Okay? 1,260 years. Okay? And then we see the war in heaven, and we spend quite a bit of time on Michael. Michael is who? Remind me, please. It's Jesus, okay? And so we saw that Jesus, he was fighting with Satan, and obviously he prevailed, and he cast him out of heaven. And he came down to earth, and we ended in verse 12, where it says that the devil knew that he had but a short time, okay? Now, let's pick it up in verse 13. Alan, can you read verse 13 for us?
Verse 13. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child.
Question. Why did the dragon persecute the woman? Okay? Now, who's the woman again? The church, right? So why is Satan attacking God's people? Tell me, according to this verse. Because he was cast to the earth, you see? The reason why Satan hates us is because he hates Jesus. You have to remember, chapter 12 is what we call, and I think we talked about this, the great controversy between Christ and Satan. Okay? You have to remember that the problem that Satan has is not with us, it's with Christ. But this is the reason why we're caught in between. You see, he hates anything that Christ loves. So that's the reason why he's persecuting us. And then you put it in the light of what we looked at today for sermon, right? When people persecute you, remember, it's not because of you, it's because of, I'm hoping at least, it's because of the fact that you are like Christ. Right? But let's keep going. Verse 14.
And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and half a time from the face of the serpent.
Okay, so now the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle. Where do we see this picture of a great eagle? Let's go to Exodus 19 and verse 4. Exodus chapter 19 and verse 4. Listen. Exodus 19 verse 4.
Ye have seen what I did into the Egyptian, and how I bear you on eagle wings, and brought you unto myself.
Okay, so this was referring to who though? The Israelites, right? And how God delivered them out of Egypt. But really, the eagle's wings is all about deliverance. Deliverance, all right? So when this woman is given 2 wings of a great eagle, God is delivering her from persecution in verse 13. You see that? And she's brought into the wilderness. Now, tell me again. I think we looked at this before as well. You're going to have to remember this for Revelation 17. I know I told you guys this. What is the wilderness experience? When the woman flew into the wilderness, what happened? What happened to the woman?
Nurtured by God.
Sorry?
Nurtured by God.
Nurtured by God. Okay, but that's what happened at the end. That she's nourished for a times and half a time. But what is the wilderness experience? That's what I want to know.
Trial.
Trial? No.
Preparation.
Huh?
Preparation.
Preparation? No. Okay. When Elijah went into the wilderness, why did he go there?
To escape.
To escape? To
Run away.
hide, right? So wilderness, you have to remember this because we'll look at this wilderness again, but people get mixed up with what it really is. The wilderness is a place of hiding. Okay? It's a place of hiding. And God hid her there for how long?
4,000
Times, and half a time. 538 to 1798. So look, Revelation 12, it brings us all the way back to the same situation. Okay? And so in verse 14, we are at 538 to 1798. This is verse 14. Now, verse 15. Well,
In verse 15, and the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood.
okay. So the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood, that he might cause her to be carried away the flood, right? Who is the serpent? Huh? It is Satan, right? But Satan himself didn't literally do it. When the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood, and it says what? That he might cause him to be carried away with the flood. I mean, just by that word alone, what are you thinking of? Persecution. But you think of Noah's flood. Okay? Noah's flood. What happened during the time of Noah's flood? Who was carried away? The wicked were carried away. They were destroyed in a sense, right? And so here, we see something that this group or this power is doing that tries to resemble what something Christ did before. Okay? But where does the flood come from? The serpent's mouth. Now, what is the difference between when Satan comes as a serpent and when he comes as a dragon? Fire and water, okay.
As a serpent to deceive.
Okay, so the serpent was more for deception. How about the dragon?
Persecution.
Persecution, you see? And we see this even in chapter 12 alone. Every time you see the dragon, persecution. Every time you see the serpent, deception. Okay? But out of his mouth came this flood. Let's go to Matthew 12:34. Matthew chapter 12 and verse 34.
Matthew chapter 12, 34, brood of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Okay, So he's really got the heart of Satan, heart of the serpent. You see that? What does water represent in the Bible?
Multitude of people.
Okay, in one application, water represents people, a lot of people, right?
Yes.
Multitudes. This is Revelation 17:15. But actually, the water also represents something else. Sanctuary people, you guys should know this. What does water in the Bible represent? Cleansing by what? The Word of God, you see? So the water in the Bible also represents the Bible. Okay? Water in the Bible represents the Bible as well. Is this good water?
No.
What is the serpent known for? So what is coming out of his mouth? We call this false doctrine. Now, let me tell you that during the Dark Ages, the people were not only persecuted, like with a sword, they were also they were also attacked in a sense with all the false doctrine. Like what? You don't need to confess to Jesus, you confess to the priest. You pay money and God will forgive you. Okay? This is what happened in those times. This is how the Catholic Church became so rich. And if you didn't believe me, then I will take out my dragon. You see that? So first he comes as a serpent. And if that didn't work, he would bring his armies to try to just eradicate you. You are a heretic. You believe the wrong thing. So that's why my soldiers will come and kill you. So in verse 15, we see Satan, he tries to attack with false doctrine. Verse 16 now. Florian. Revelation chapter 12.
And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth, and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth.
Okay, so who helped the woman? The earth, right? So, I'm going to keep this thought in mind. We're going to come back to this eventually. But the part that I want you to focus on now is something has changed. Something's the same, but yet it's changed as well. What is it? Did you notice that in verse 16? Swallowed up the flood. Okay, that's, kind of the same, right? Okay, in verse 16, what is casting out water? The dragon. In verse 15? Serpent. Do you see that? So, my deception didn't work. False doctrine. So out of his mouth now came a different sort of flood of people to persecute and to kill and to destroy. So you see how Satan always works in different ways. If I can't deceive you, then I'll kill you. And that's exactly what happened during the Dark Ages. During the Dark Ages. The people like the Waldensians, I've mentioned about them before. They lived in the Swiss Alps. I had a privilege of going into one of the caves that they worshipped in. It was just amazing. Like they were up in the mountain, and because they didn't have a church and they had to hide, they went into a cave and worshipped there. And these people, because they were attacked so much, they kept their faith very pure. You attacking me, I must have something that I'm doing right. They kept their faith very pure when they were attacked. But you know what? After the papacy realized that this was not working, they toned down their attacks. And they sent people in as friends. And through that, they changed their doctrine and their thinking. You see that? So Satan, he has a double-sided face here. He's either coming as a serpent, or he's coming as a dragon. And we can see clearly that this relates to persecution. Verse 17. Revelation 12:17.
17. And the dragon was wrought with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ.
Okay, so look, there's much that we can look into here, but I'm not going to. Actually, you know what? Let's go up one side and then we'll come down the other side. Sorry, it'll be easier that way. I'll confuse you from the last time. But we can actually look into this more if you sit in the doctrine study and look at the remnant church. But let me just give you the big picture about what's happening here, okay? So the dragon, he's angry with who? The woman, okay? And he goes to make war with the remnant of her seed. But this remnant, the word remnant means what? Does anybody know? The leftover, okay? Remind me again, who is the woman? Okay, Revelation 12:1, who was the woman? No. Okay, Mary. That was verse 4, right? Verse 5. But at the very beginning, when John saw the woman clothed with a sun and standing on the moon with a crown of 12 stars, who is that woman? Jesus? Oh. Mary, yes, applicable. But also somebody else. It was the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay? It was the 12 tribes of Israel. God's people throughout all time. 12 stars, the 12 tribes. 12 stars also represent 12 disciples. 12 churches? No such thing as 12 churches, my friend. Okay? But the 12 disciples as well, upon which the church was built, which was Jesus Christ. Okay? Now remind me again, if you can, look back to your notes. What does the sun represent?
Jesus.
That represents Jesus Christ. Okay? What did the moon represent?
Bible.
Okay, so the moon was the Bible, and the sun was the son of righteousness, which was Jesus Christ. Okay? I want you to look very carefully at this remnant. There are two characteristics of the remnant. What was it?
Keep the commandment of God.
They keep the commandments. So they have the commandments of God, and they have the testimony of Jesus. Now, as Adventists, many people point to the testimony of Jesus as the spirit of prophecy, which is Ellen White. But no, that's wrong. The testimony of Jesus is not Ellen White. Okay? Let's look very quickly at what the testimony of Jesus is. But before we go out of chapter 12, tell me, this one is not so clear, okay, the commandments. But, I'm just drawing it this way so you might know. So here's the sun, here's the moon. Which one is the testimony of Jesus? It's the moon. Remember the moon was a faithful witness? It testifies. If the moon is shining, what can you be sure of? The sun is shining as well, right? Even though it might be 12 midnight on your side, you see the full bright moon, you know the sun is shining on the other side of the world. If the moon never shines, you might be a bit afraid that the sun will not be there either. Right? So the moon is like a testimony. So really, what I'm trying to show you is the remnant is a leftover of the woman. That means the remnant must be exactly like the woman. Do you see that? When the woman was clothed with the sun and she's standing on the moon, the remnant also have a testimony. They keep the commandments. Now, the son of what? We saw this in Malachi chapter 4. The son of righteousness. But do you know the commandments are also righteousness? What am I trying to show you? If you want to know who the remnant is, just study the woman. They're no different. Do you see that? God's people have never changed since the beginning of time. We have changed in, like, we don't kill a lamb to confess our sin anymore, right? We just pray for forgiveness. We don't celebrate all the feasts and all these things like the Israelites did. But in essence, the characteristics of God's people have never changed. If I give you my leftover cake that we had for lunch, do you expect it to be exactly like the cake that was made? Yes or no? Yes. If I have a chocolate chip cookie and I eat it all but I can't finish it, so I give you my leftover, do you expect it to be the exact same chocolate chip cookie that I ate myself? Yes, right? Do you get my point? Even though this is the leftover, the remnant, they're not different. But what does leftover remnant mean then? Huh? What's the leftover then? What's the remnant? They are the last. Okay? I can't finish it. This is all I have left. You eat it. The remnant is the last. Okay? This is the only thing special about them that's a little bit different from everybody else. Is everybody else was either the first or in between, but the remnant is the very last of God's people. In other words, I believe the remnant is talking about us today. It's talking about us. So, let me show you what the testimony of Jesus is, okay? But does everybody understand what I'm saying about the remnant? Is that clear? Yeah? Okay. So let me show you what the testimony of Jesus is. Come with me to Revelation chapter 19. What is the testimony of Jesus? Revelation 19 and verse 10. So who are we up to? Michelle or no? Thank you, Michelle. Revelation 19:10.
And I fell at his feet to worship him. And he said unto me, See thou do it not. I am thy fellow servant, and of thy brethren that have the testimony of Jesus. Worship God, for the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy.
Okay. Tell me, what is the testimony of Jesus? Spirit of prophecy. Okay? Now, it said there also that he was thy fellow servant. Tell me in this verse, who has the testimony of Jesus? Who? Who has the testimony of Jesus? It's right there. Huh? I am thy fellow servant and of thy brethren. Okay? Look. The brethren are the ones that had the testimony of Jesus, okay? Which is the same as the spirit of prophecy. Who are these people that have the testimony of Jesus? Come with me to Revelation 22 and verse 9. Revelation 22 and verse 9. Tell me, who are the brethren? Okay, go ahead, Nunu.
Then said he unto me, See thou do it not, for I am thy fellow servant, and of thy brethren the prophets, and of them which keep the saying of this book, worship God.
So the brethren are the prophets. And what's so special about the prophets? They wrote the Bible. Do you see that? So this is why we can equate this moon to be the testimony of Jesus, because we found out that the moon was the Bible, right? We saw this in our last time together. And the testimony of Jesus, you know what? The people that keep the Bible as well, the remnant, they have the same characteristic as the woman. They're no different. You see? So, how does Ellen White fall into this? She's just a prophet. She is not the testimony of Jesus, okay? Don't get that wrong. She is just one of the prophets. So that's where she falls in. But many people seem to think this is Ellen White. And this is Ellen White. And this is the Bible. Wrong. We spent a lot of time with that the last time, okay? Any questions so far? Any questions on Ellen White and her role as a prophet? Really? Okay, let me share with you anyways then. I want to show you why Ellen White is so important for us today. And her ministry as a prophet. Okay? Let me ask you. During the time of Noah and the flood, who was the prophet? Okay? Noah was that prophet, right? During the time of Nineveh, when Nineveh was about to be destroyed, who was the prophet? Jonah, correct? During the time of the Exodus, who was the prophet? Moses, okay? Now let me ask you this, think about this. Do you think these people could have been saved without Noah around, or Moses around, or Jonah around? Yes or no? No? Yes? If Noah did not preach for 120 years, could people have been saved? Yes or no? Possible, but highly unlikely. He was the bearer of what we call the present truth. Do you remember we talked about the present truth versus the precious truth? Present truth is truth just for our present time. And you see, Ellen White is the prophet for our generation. And I'm not saying that without them you cannot be saved, full stop. But they were the bearer of a very important message. You see, if Jonah didn't go to preach at Nineveh, what would have God done? What would God have done? He would have just destroyed it, right? They would have no chance at all. So, Ellen White, she bears a very special message for our time as well. And to ignore her, it's at the peril of our own souls. Do we have the Bible? Absolutely. Were there writings of the prophets available during the time of Jonah? Yes or no? There was. There were scriptures available. Okay, Noah, he probably had a bit harder time, but you know what? For many, many years, he had Adam. Do you guys know that Adam was alive while Noah was alive? Yeah, they were 10 generations apart, but he was still alive. So he got to see the first man that God ever created before the flood came. So they didn't need a Bible back then, they just had Adam. And then Adam said, you want to know, you don't believe me? Okay, let me take you to the edge of the Garden of Eden. You see the angels there with the sword? You see the tree of life over there in the distance? I was in there before. So they didn't need the Bible. Just go look. You don't believe me? Go look. You know, it was very simple. But ever since then, ever since the flood came, the Garden of Eden was taken away. We had written scripture. Because nowhere on earth do we see Garden of Eden with angels with a flaming sword anymore. You see that? But to ignore the prophet that God sends for us in our generation is at the peril of our own souls. This is how important Ellen White was. During the call to come out of Babylon, God sent his prophets, Nehemiah, right? During the time of Medo-Persian Empire, that Esther. So these prophets played very vital, important roles in their generation as well. And this is why I want to encourage all of you, if you're not already, to spend time in the writings of Ellen White every day. Every day. Because she is a prophet for our time. Don't neglect your Bibles, okay? Because a study of her writings will also lead you back to a study of the scriptures. But this remnant is no different from the woman at the very beginning. Okay? God's people have never changed. Never changed. Any questions about Revelation chapter 12? If not, let's move on to Revelation chapter 13, okay? Revelation chapter 13, and we'll pick it up in verse 1. Revelation 13, verse 1. Who's going to read?
Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name.
Verse 2.
And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority.
Okay, Revelation 13 is a very exciting chapter to study. If you've never studied Daniel 7 though, you will not understand Revelation 13. Okay? So if you're missing some information and this passes you over the top of your head, please come see me and we'll sit down and study Daniel together. Alright? But what do we see here? Give me the details that are thrown out. There's a beast rising up out of where? Okay. Keep going. It has 7 heads. Okay. And 10 crowns upon the 10 horns, right? Keep going. It has the name of blasphemy. Where? On his head. So most likely his forehead, right? Now, this will only apply to those who have been with me from the very beginning. Tell me, according to the book of Revelation, the definition of blasphemy. Oh, we've studied this. Come on, think about this. Huh? No. That's from Daniel. That's Daniel 2. Daniel 7. But tell me, according to the book of Revelation. So, if you guys have a touch phone, touch whatever, search on the book of Revelation the word blasphemy. You will find the first hit that comes up in the book of Revelation. Tell me the text. I don't want to give it to you. Do a little bit of searching, it's not bad for you. Blasphemy. Where else do you find blasphemy in the book of Revelation? Oh, too far. Revelation chapter 2, verse 9. This is where we are. This is the definition of blasphemy that I want you to remember, especially when it comes to this beast, okay? Can you read that for us? Who's next? Lisa? Oh, Ronald. Revelation 2, verse 9.
9. If any man have an ear, let him hear.
Hey? No.
Read. I know thy word and the tribulation and the poverty, but thou art enriched, and I know that the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan.
Ah, look. This beast obviously is a bad beast. It's from the synagogue of Satan. But tell me the definition of blasphemy. Speaking against the Most High? Where'd you get that from? Revelation 2:9. What's the definition of blasphemy? Claiming to be Jew, but you're not. What do we call this? False Christian. Okay? Blasphemy, according to the book of Revelation, is claiming to be a Jew or claiming to be like Christ, but you're really not. This is the ultimate epitome of a false Christian, okay? This is what we're going to call the Antichrist. Now, verse 2 of Revelation 13. Tell me the elements of this beast. So we see it's already got 7 heads, 10 horns, but what else? Okay, the body is like a leopard. The feet of a bear. The mouth of a lion. And then, what about the dragon? It gave him power, seat, and authority. Okay? You will see all these animals in Daniel 7. This is why if you don't know this beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, you will not understand this power. But look, all this is in one animal, all right? Have you ever seen a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns at the zoo before? Anybody? No, right? This is not literal, all right? This is figurative. So let's apply all the symbols then, real quick. What does C represent? Many people. Now, let me put this in red. Many people, basically, okay? Now, at least the first 3 animals, I want to show you something very interesting about these 3 animals, okay? Every part that is brought out here is the strength of that animal. Do you know that? Every part here is the strength of that animal. But before we go into that a little bit more, tell me, in Daniel 7, who is the leopard? Who's the bear? Persia. Who is the lion? And the dragon is Rome. Okay? But do you know, when you look at that animal, their strength is described here. We'll come back to the leopard first, okay? Because before you think I'm crazy. Let's start with the bear. Do you know the strength of the bear is his paws? Do you know that? You know when a bear is intimidated, it stands up. And the strength is when it lands on you and hits you with his paws. His mouth is actually a very small mouth for such a large animal. You know what I mean? The strength of the bear is his paws. The strength of the lion is his mouth. Do you know that? Especially when he roars. Do you know the lion is not the fastest animal and it's not the strongest? But they say when the lion roars, it stuns their prey. They get so scared. Do you know that? And so it puts them into a bit of a shock and a panic, and for a while the animals are just running around. That's why they roar. Of course they roar to herd. You know, if you ever seen documentaries on lions, have you seen that before? When they start, before they start hunting, they start roaring to each other. But the strength of the lion is his roar. And of course his mouth. When you see cats hunt, they don't just cling on. They're going for the ride trying to kill him. They bite in, isn't it? The strength of the lion is his mouth. Now, when you come back to the leopard, why the body, okay? Why is the strength of the leopard the body? Usually it's the speed, right? But do you know what's interesting about the leopard? Camouflage. Okay, what does a leopard look like? Tell me the pattern on his body. It's what? Spots. So Alan says the spots on the leopard's body is for camouflage. Do you guys agree? Yeah? Tell me. You guys are smiling because we got through this. At least Alicia's a bit nice. She's just sitting there calmly. But what do you see in Africa that has spots that can be camouflaged? No, in nature. He's not hiding around cheetahs. You know what I mean? What is the leopard's spots for? I mean, you know when the zebra has its stripes like this? They say when it runs, it confuses the leopard and the cheetah, their prey. You know that? But nobody knows what the spots of a leopard are for. And you know what? I tried to research it online, and they always say, people say, or people think, but nobody has any idea why a leopard has spots. Okay? And let me come back to this, okay? So we have the strength of every beast here. So if you go back to Daniel now, tell me, what was the strength of Greece? It was their philosophy. Do you know our education is based on Greek education today? Did you know that? The system of degrees, like a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and a PhD, this is Greek education. The smart people don't hire people based on just their certificate. You know that? Harvard, they don't care whether you aced your high school. They want to know what sort of person you are outside of that as well. Whether you know how to socialize with people, whether you get involved in community work. They look at your resume to see what you do, not just how high your score is. But Greek education is based on philosophy. Let me show you an instance in the book of Acts. Acts. I'm sorry, let me find it real quick. There was this time that in the book of Acts that Paul was in Athens. Do you know where Athens is? Acts chapter 17 and verse 22. Acts 17 verse 22. This is what we understand about the Greeks, even in Paul's day. Sherman. Acts chapter 17 verse 22.
There's no battery already.
Oh, there's no more battery? Okay, no worries. Just speak loud.
Acts 17.
Acts 17 verse 22.
Then Paul stood in the midst of Mars Hill and said, Ye men of Athens, I perceive that in all things ye are too superstitious.
So he said what? In all things I perceive you people of Athens are too superstitious. You know why? Because everything's based on philosophy. They were just making things out of nothing. To the point where they might even say the leopard, those spots are like eyes. You know, this is what superstition is. You know, Chinese people are very superstitious as well, right? Tell me, what do you put on your window to keep out ghosts? Huh? Mirror? No, man. What do you put to keep out ghosts? Onion. Ah, there you go. And garlic. Right? What was the mirror? You know what we believe as Chinese? You never put your bed next to the mirror like this. You know why? You look at it, you might get scared, and the ghost will jump out of you. This is superstition. This is philosophy. You know what I mean? So, this is Greek thinking. This is their strength, in a sense. Can anybody tell me what was the strength of Medo-Persia? Huh? Infallible laws. Okay? Infallible laws. Does anybody not understand what infallible means? It is laws that cannot be changed. In other words, I cannot be wrong. So if I put this law in, I'm not going to change it because I'm never wrong. Infallible means I make no mistakes. So they put laws in that cannot be changed. You remember Daniel, right? He was thrown in the lion's den. It was during the time of Medo-Persian Empire. And the king, he signed it. He realized he'd been tricked, but he couldn't change it. It was the laws of the Medes and the Persians. You see that? How about Babylon? What is the strength of Babylon? I hear only my students say it. It's idolatry. And we see this also in the book of Daniel, right? Nebuchadnezzar has the dream, and then the next chapter he makes a big image, right? You know those lions with the wings? Do you see pictures of those lions with the wings and they're sitting there like that? That's during the Babylonian time. Babylons. So, philosophy, infallible laws, idolatry, and the dragon, Rome, what was it known for? Huh? Persecution? No. Something more neutral. Huh? Brutal. They were brutal? Is that what you said? Oh, okay. Close to that. They're known for their military power. Okay? The Romans were the first to use iron in their weapons. They were the ones that I always remembered growing up because I colored all the soldiers in. They're the ones that they figured out the formation where you could come close to the castle and you put the shields above and the shields on the side. It was impenetrable by the arrows. You know, so they were very strong and tactical in their fighting. So look, what I want you to see.
Should it be persecution? Since you're talking about dragon.
Yeah, but look, he gave him his power, seat, and great authority. But yeah, the dragon in chapter 12 is known for persecution, but Rome was known for military power. They were the strength. You see this in Daniel chapter 2, the iron. In it shall be the strength of iron, right? I'm sorry, my picture's really bad, okay? It just looks like a bird, all right? This is the dragon. Okay? Just not good at drawing. This is all in this beast. Are you with me? We know this beast to be who? Who is it? It's the Roman Catholic Church, okay? And it's very interesting, in the Roman Catholic Church, you will find their philosophy, their traditions. There's no scriptural authority. Sunday is all a man-made tradition, right? You will see idolatry in the church. They worship saints, which God never told us to worship. And one day they will put a law in place that will not be changed, even though people will realize and it'll be too late. You see, in this power, you find these three things. The dragon is external for a reason, but he is the one that gives the Catholic Church their power. In history, who was this? It wasn't Rome. What was his name? He was a general. Does anybody know? It starts with a C. Want to play hangman? There's no A. Sorry. There's no E even. Clovis. Look, you have to remember these names. They're very important to us in history. He was a French king, but he was the ruler of the then known world at that time. And yes, it was in a sense the Roman army, but he was French. This guy was French, okay? He was the one that gave the Catholic Church its power. Okay? And it's separated out for this reason. So you remember, the lion, the bear, the leopard, it's all this, but the dragon is separate. Okay? Now, verse 3 of Revelation 13. Revelation 13, verse 3. Anthony, could you read for us?
Yeah.
No mic, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, it works? Okay, oh, sorry. Thanks. There you go.
Verse 3 says, "And I saw one of the hairs as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast.
Okay, so there are three sections to this text, okay? The first is what? One of its heads received a deadly wound. And then, what happened next? The wound is healed. And then, all the world wondered. Oops. So, tell me, when did the Catholic Church receive the deadly wound? It received the deadly wound in 1798. What's his name? Napoleon. And his general birth year. Do you know where Napoleon was from? France. The French Revolution. It's very interesting that a French king puts the Catholic Church in power. And it's another French king that takes the church off its power. Okay? Keep this in mind because we're going to read this in a minute. When was the wound healed? To understand what the healing of the deadly wound is, you've got to understand what causes the deadly wound. Okay? So if you were to look at this, right, what caused one of its heads to be wounded to death? In 1798, what happened? No, Pope died in 17... Oh yeah, he died in 1798. But what happened though, in essence? In 1798. He was put in prison in 1793, I believe, or 1794. But yes, he died. And then the Catholic Church in 1798 was no longer a military power. So what happened in 1798? This was taken away. Do you see that? Has the Catholic Church changed in any of these? No. Except they couldn't do anything. No more military power, okay? So, what is the healing of the deadly wound? They receive military power again. Has the church, Catholic Church, received military power? Not yet. Look, this and this are both prophecy. Okay? We know it hasn't happened yet because not all the world is wondering after the beast. Do you see that? The Catholic Church, you know, when it received military power in 538, what did they do? When the Catholic Church received military power in 538, what did they begin to do? They began to persecute. So this is the reason why we know the wound has not been healed yet, because the Catholic Church is not persecuting anybody. You see that? That is still future. So verse 3, 1/3 of it is history, already happened. But now we're getting into the future, right? Do you see that? Any questions? Any questions? If not, let's continue. Verse 4. Revelation 13 and verse 4. Whose turn? Derek?
Revelation 13 verse 4. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him?
So they worshipped who? The dragon and the beast. They worship the whole thing together. So this worship is consistent of both these things together, okay? Now this is important for later to understand the mark of the beast. There's a difference between worshiping just this, but this together is very different. Okay? And they said what? Who is able to make war with him? Verse 5.
Revelation 13 verse 5. And they was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 40 and 2 months.
So he continues for how long? Can you convert 42 months into years for me? What's 42 months in years? What's 42 months in days? "42 months is what time period? 538 to 1798. Okay? So he continued for 42 months. It brings us back into the past. Okay? Still talking about this time period, 1798, right? His history. Let's keep going. Verse 6.
And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God to blaspheme his name and his turbulence and them that dwell in heaven.
So he opened his mouth in blasphemy. Now, not just general, but against God, to blaspheme his name, and to blaspheme his what? Tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. What does it mean that he blasphemed those in heaven and the tabernacle of God? What is that referring to? Greek idols? Please explain. What do you mean? Blaspheme his tabernacle? What is another word for tabernacle? Sanctuary. You see, this power, they blasphemed God and those in heaven and his sanctuary by bringing the sanctuary down to earth. In what way? Who is able to go into the sanctuary? Priest. They instituted priests who could forgive sin, who could do the work that only actually Jesus Christ could do. It was a leading up to this, and in the midst of this, during this time, 538 to 1798, that the Catholic Church blasphemed God, his name, those in the tabernacle, and those that dwell in heaven. But how did he blaspheme God's name and blaspheme God? He called himself God. Do you know what the Pope calls? They call the Pope? It's the Vicar of God. Do you know what the Vicar of God means? The representative of God. Even the prophets never called themselves that. Ellen White never for once ever called her that. But they said what? I am representing God on earth. And this is why we have the authority to do whatever we want. You see what I mean? So they blaspheme God, his name, tabernacle, everything. Verse 7.
Verse 7, and it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all tribes and tongues and nations.
And then verse 8.
And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world.
Okay, so what it's doing is mixing the two events together, just like what Matthew 24 did. Okay? And the reason why we know this is because, look, it says that he reigned for 42 months, right? 1,260 days, 3.5 years. This is history. But then it says what? All that dwell on the earth shall worship him, whose names were not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. That is future. All the world wanted it. All the world, all that dwell on the earth shall worship. Very similar language, you see. So he's mixing the two events. Why? Because he's describing the beast, but to identify the beast, you've got to talk about his history. He did this, but he's going to do this as well. Do you see that? Verse 9 and 10.
Verse 9. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killed with the sword must be killed with the sword. He is the patient and the faith of the saint.
So, it says what? He that leadeth into captivity? So did he lead people into captivity? Yeah, he persecuted people, right? It says, he shall also go into captivity. He that kills with a sword must be killed with a sword. And you know what? The very power that gave him power to kill was the same power that killed him. Do you see that? And it repeats itself. This will happen again in the future when his deadly wound is healed. Okay? Let me show you the picture very quickly. Come with me to Revelation chapter 17. I mean, we'll look at this in the future, but I just want to show you this concept. French king gives Catholic Church power. French king takes power away from Catholic Church. Okay? Revelation 17. And please read with me verse 12 and 13. Okay? Revelation 17, verse 12 and 13. Alex.
The 10 horns which you saw are the 10 kings, which still have been given no kingdom, but they are given authority as kings, with the beast for 1 hour. 13. These have one mind, and they give their power and authority to the beast.
You see, these 10 horns, which are 10 kings, they give their power to the beast, right? Now, read verse 16 for us of Revelation 17.
And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, this shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire.
Do you see that? The 10 horns that give the woman the power, and the beast the power, it's the same 10 horns that will hate her, and they'll make her desolate. History will repeat itself. Okay? So, French king gives power, French king took it away. Revelation 17, 10 horns give their power, and the same 10 horns will hate her and destroy her. You see? So this understanding of what you studied in the past is very important. It will happen again. It will happen again. Okay? So this is why history is so important to study. Can we go another half an hour? Or you guys too worn out? Question? Okay.
So the next time the dragon that will give power to the Roman Church will be from out of the land, right? The land.
Okay, so the next time the
US.
dragon will give power to this,
It's the US.
it's US, you say?
So in that sense, the US will take it away as well.
We'll get to that. Okay. Don't jump to conclusions too quick. Alright? But Revelation will make it very clear how prophecy will repeat itself. Alright? Can we begin to go through the next power? This is a very interesting study. And I hate to waste my drawing here, because I'm going to need it. Alright? So is it okay we continue? Just a few more verses. So let's pick it up in verse 11. Alright? After Lisa, who's next? Cassidy? Thank you.
Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon.
Okay, so now we see a beast come up out of the earth. Okay, what does he look like? It looks like a lamb. Alright? Oops. And it says he speaks like what? A dragon. You know what I always imagine when I read this verse? You know when a baby comes out, you always expect it with a high-pitched voice, right? It's like the baby comes out of the mother's womb and it's got this rah, rah, this low voice. Wouldn't it just be shocking? Right? This is a lamb, but it's got it speaks like a dragon. Now, on the concept that we looked at, Matthew 12:34, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So when this beast speaks like a dragon, really, what do we understand about it? It's got the heart of a dragon. Okay? Let me bring you to a text in Matthew chapter 7. Please come with me to Matthew chapter 7. It doesn't talk about a dragon here, but the principles are exactly the same. Okay? Matthew chapter 7. And verse 15. Whose turn? Are we back at the beginning? Oh.
Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves.
Do you see that? A false prophet is one who has sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are a wolf. This guy, he looks like a sheep, but inside he's a dragon. So what do we call him? He's a false prophet. Okay? Don't forget, this power in Revelation 13 is a false prophet. Now, how do we know that this is United States of America? Let's go through some identifying marks, okay? I'm going to give you 5. How do we know that this is USA? Number 1, it comes up out of the earth. Okay? Now, the sea was what? Many people. So the earth, opposite, is what? Not no people, a few people. Okay? Where this nation comes out from, it has very few people at the very beginning. Number 2, if you go back to verse 10, it says what? What's happening in verse 10? He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword shall be killed with the sword. What's that describing? Catholic Church in 1798 received the deadly wound. You see that? So while this beast is going down into captivity, verse 10, John looks over here and he sees another beast rising up out of the sea. Do you see that? So while this beast is going down, he's coming up. In other words, verse 10, it tells us that it must arise around 1798. Okay? One beast going down, the other beast coming up. Number 3, it looks like a lamb. It's a young animal. So this must be a young nation. Do you see that? Because all the other beasts, like even Daniel 8, it talks about the ram and the goat, they're grown animals. But this is a lamb. One more about the lamb. Do you know that when you go through the book of Revelation and you look up that word lamb, maybe you can do it now as I'm talking. You go through and find every hit that you can find on the word lamb. I think there's 25 hits on the word lamb in the book of Revelation. Every single one of them, except This one is a capital L-A-M-B, referring to Jesus. Okay? This is the only place, Revelation 13 and verse 11, that you find the word lamb as a small l. Do you know that? What do I say about this lamb then? It's a Christ-like nation. Or should I say it is a Christian nation. Okay? You go throughout the book of Revelation. Every single time you see the word lamb, it's capital L. Except for here, Revelation 13. Okay? And then lastly, this is the fifth one. It has 2 horns on its head. Now, can you name me some other animals that have horns? Huh? Goat? Cow? Huh? Ox? Huh? Deer? There's lots. Moose? Right? There's all sorts of animals with horns. Apart from them all having horns, okay? What else is in common with these animals? They are all vegetarian. Do you know that? Now, I have a point with this. I'm not saying you should be vegetarian, okay? You don't have 2 horns. You should be vegetarian, but this is not the application of 2 horns, all right? But look, every single one of these animals, they have horns, but they're vegetarian. In other words, they don't use their horns to hunt. Like a goat doesn't run, boom, kill you, and then he starts eating. You know what I mean? He doesn't use his horns to kill you and then eat you. What are the horns for? Defense, protection. So the 2 horns are 2 powers that protect. Protected. And once we identified, I mean, when you look at this 4, it's actually very easy to understand who this nation is. USA came up with very few people at the very beginning. Did you know that? There's one holiday that commemorates this nation that it almost killed everybody. Thanksgiving. Okay? The pioneers that came and landed on US soil, they didn't know what was coming. Okay? They were up near New York there, Maine, Massachusetts, actually. And they landed and they were coming into winter. And they had not grown any food, they had not, prepared for winter. Many of them died. So the following year, after they'd grown all their crops and they had all the corn and carrots and peas, I don't think they ate turkey that time. I just really don't think they ate turkey for Thanksgiving, yeah. But that year, they remembered all the people that had died before, because so many of them perished. And this is a very good holiday to remember, actually. But they started off as very few people, US. You can't believe that, right? Today they have about 330 million people there. But it's because of this. They arose around 1798. When did US become an independent nation? Do you remember the month and the day? 4th of July, right? Independence Day. People make movies out of it. Is it a young nation? Absolutely. Can you name me some other Christian nations, though, today? Britain. Is Britain young? Oh, they have so much history, right? Any other Christian nations? Egypt? France? Oh no. All the European nations are verily atheist. Australia is not a Christian nation, do you know that? They're just like US now. They worship sports. Really. They're atheists. But it's very clear just from this identifying marks who it is. But last, what are the two powers that protect US? French? Did you say French? What were the two powers? Italians protect US? What? Two horns that protect it. It's not the French, it's not the Italians, man. No, not the Democrats. They'll sink you. The Republicanism and Protestantism. Separation of church and state. The principles, okay, look, if you want to get into politics, the Democrats today really are the Republicans, and the Republicans really are the Democrats, okay? They just changed everything around. But what happened at the very beginning of US history, do you know? They landed on this soil, and they said, you know what, we got to start right. We got to make sure we worship God. All right? And they began to persecute people who did not go to church. And then they stopped. It's like, wait a minute. This is what we were running away from. You know? We ran here because over there in Europe, they were persecuting us because we didn't believe the same as them. So they made an amendment to their laws. This is what you call the First Amendment. Right? Have you heard of this before in US law? No? Yeah. Some of you don't know. The First Amendment in US, you guys have to learn US history. It's very important. Because if this law is changed, we're in big trouble. Can anyone tell me what the First Amendment of the US Constitution is? Freedom of speech and worship. Okay? They made this amendment to allow anybody of any religion to worship however they wanted. Free. No strings attached. And this is the reason why US grew to such a great number. You know, people that are fleeing from persecution in their country. You know, I had a friend when I was studying in US, I had this friend, his name was Azeze. He came from Eritrea. Have you ever heard of that country before? Yeah, neither had I, until I met him. He was fleeing from persecution in his country. And he came to US and he sought asylum. And they gave him asylum status. He's a US citizen today. US is still like that today. So this is the reason why US was able to grow so quickly. Because of the freedom that it gave to the people. And do you know, sorry, maybe I need to stop here and talk about this issue. Because I want you to see the important problems that are arising now in US. And the way that Satan is making headway into changing the US Constitution. Gay marriage. Homosexuality, right? People don't understand the big issue behind it. I have no problem if you want to get married to someone of the same sex, you do it. More power to you. All right? But what's happening recently in Houston? Pastors began to speak against gay and lesbianism. The governor of Houston is a lesbian. And she ordered all the pastors who spoke against gay and lesbianism to turn in your sermon scripts and stop them. This is the governor of Houston. You know what's that attacking? Freedom of speech. People don't realize that, I have no problem with whatever you want to do as a gay and lesbian. I mean, I don't agree with it. But people don't understand the underlying current of what it's doing to the US Constitution. When you legalize something like that, you're no longer allowed to speak against it. Do you see that? So really, it's attacking the freedom of speech. And slowly, the First Amendment of the Constitution is being eroded away by such issues that have nothing to do with religious freedom in a sense. You know what I mean? And this is the great strides that US is making towards having that very horn, Protestantism, being eroded away slowly. You see that? For those who don't understand republicanism really, it's really republic versus monarchy, okay? The hands are in the power is in the hands of the people. We choose who we want as our leader. And then, of course, monarchy is succession of kings in the family, right? So depending if you had a good king, good for you. Bad king, I feel sorry for you, right? But this, it puts the power in the hands of people. That's what really republicanism is all about. Of course, the presidential race is totally different today. US is not what it once used to be, right? But you have to understand these issues at large. Why? Because the Bible said in Revelation 13 verse 3 that when its deadly wound would be healed, what would happen? All the world, including you. This world that you're sitting right now, this piece of land that you're sitting on right now, the whole world will wander after the beast. You see what I mean? So this is the reason why you have to understand what is taking place in the US of A. And what is changing. Because this lamb that started out as a good lamb, its heart began to change. And eventually, it will begin to speak like a dragon. What is the dragon known for? Military power. Do you see US as a military power today? Oh yeah. But it says what? It will begin to speak. How does a country speak? Tell me, how does a kingdom speak? Through its laws. Something about the laws that will be established in US one day will cause it to flex its military arm. And all the world would wander after the beast. So look, we're getting into exciting study here, but it's because it's so relevant to our time. If this is the first time you're hearing this, you need to dig down and study with all your might. You know? Why? You have to be knowledgeable, you have to be intelligent about what's coming, so you know how to prepare your life. The things around you, material possessions mean nothing if you lose your eternal life. You know what I mean? So make sure we prepare rightly. But now we're coming to our present crisis here. Our present, future has become present already, you know? We will talk about future, but now we're coming all the way to our time. Things are starting to fulfill even in our generation. So look, I'm not a great news person, but the little news that I see just scares me. You know? So you gotta keep your eyes and ears open, because all this news, what's happening in the world today, is already being fulfilled. Yeah. Any questions? Any questions? Anything to add, Dave? From news or anything you guys see in current events?
Yeah, the Pope accepting the theory of Charles Darwin.
As the what?
The evolution theory.
Right. That didn't surprise me.
Allowing gay marriage in Africa.
All right. But he's been on a slippery slope for a long time anyways, you know. But yeah, the Pope thinks that you can harmonize creation and evolution in one pot. They're starting to show their true colors. Did I tell you about how the Pope has been appointed the peace ambassador, right? For what's taking place in the Middle East there? And who usually does that actually? Who's usually the peace ambassador? Not US. No, they're the ones who hit everybody. It's UN, right? The UN is the one that's usually the peace ambassador, right? Do you know in Daniel chapter 9, it says by peace. No, Daniel chapter 8. By peace. No, it's Daniel 8. By peace he shall destroy many. You have to be so careful. You know, when you hear about now the Pope stepping in as a peace man, I'm telling you, a lot of things are being fulfilled right now. Friends, I don't want to be an alarmist. I don't want to, jolt you out of your seat and scare you and, scare you into heaven. It doesn't happen. No one gets scared into heaven. But I want you to realize the seriousness of the time that we are living in. I want you to take your Christianity seriously. I want you to take Christ seriously. If these things are really true, then it's time, what Romans, our theme for now is a time, right? It's time to put off the works of darkness. Right? Time to put on the garments of light and keep them on. No matter where you go, as a student, as a professional, as a husband or a wife, right? You make sure that you're always wearing those garments of light. Because you don't know how long we have left. So we just need to be ready today. Yeah? Any questions? If not, let's end with a word of prayer then, shall we? Let's bow our heads. Father in heaven, thank you so much for giving us these prophecies. And Lord, we realize we are living in awesome times. There's not a moment to lose. So Father, help us to use our time wisely. May you help us to use that free time that we have to store up the rich treasures of your word, that it might be a light and a guide to our life truly. And Lord, I pray for every single one of us here, as we're about to enter into a new week with its new set of temptations, with its new set of trials, its new set of stresses. Lord, whatever comes our way, help us not to forget that you are soon to come and that there are greater issues at stake than what we set before us in our jobs and in our studies. Help us, O Lord, to ever remember that. For we pray in Jesus' name.